episode of Booked, a place to explore the realms of creativity. Today's guest is Ivan Scott. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Safi, it's great to be here. And I tell you, I've been looking forward to this for months, ever since the first time we talked. And so it's like,
Oh,
wow, this day finally arrived. So I am so looking forward to speaking with you and all your listeners out there. So, and people that are watching the podcast. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
good. I'm so glad. And honestly, I've been excited too. And it felt like it was dragging on for a long time. Then all of a sudden it was like, it's tomorrow. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's definitely come up really quickly in the last few weeks. But yeah, it's been so much fun talking to writers. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk about your work and your creativity. So let's dive into it.
Thank you.
So I, in the last few days, finished reading your first book, Redhead, The Redhead and the Blue Convertible,
Hmm.
which I really enjoyed. Oh, look, you've got props and everything. I
Got
love
props
it.
and everything. I tell you, I came prepared. It's like I have got props. I've got this microphone. I feel like I'm a DJ. It's
It's
like, hey, the
amazing.
request lines are now open. KGFJ, Soul Radio. Whoa, 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 whoa. So I tell you, I come prepared tonight.
And with the bow tie, which I'm
Oh
thrilled
yeah,
about.
yeah. I knew you would be, so that's why I was like, I'm going to wear this for her. So we're just going to have just a great time tonight.
I appreciate it. I feel like it's a little nod to Billy's character. I feel like
Could
it's a
be,
nod to Billy's
could be. Yeah, I'm
character.
glad you caught that. Yeah.
I did, yeah. So I, generally speaking, do not go for books that have a romantic element to it, or when there's like boy meets girl, or it's much more complex than that. I will say to any listeners out there, I really enjoyed it. It was very
Oh.
witty. Something that I found very spooky about this book is that I was a taxi driver in Canterbury,
Oh.
um,
Oh, wow.
which was
Yeah.
crazy, and I was
Yeah.
like, this is really strange. The main difference is that I'm not a redhead and I don't like Tottenham. So,
That's where the
um,
similarities end.
yeah, it was just those two things. But I was still reading and go, "Whoa, this is crazy." But yeah, I think this was a lot of fun to read. It was very, very witty, and I was thinking to myself, okay, so how's this story going to go? Because you've got, I don't want to spoil any of it, but you've got like some of the classical elements of, people maybe fall in love, or are they going to really like each other? And then all of a sudden I was like, hang on a minute, who the fuck is Billy? What is he
Hmm.
doing?
Who is this
Um,
guy?
it's so good. And it didn't take me long to read it. I think it was like 2 days I read it in
Oh,
because I was like,
wow.
I need to know who these people are. So it was a lot of fun. Um, but yeah, I just love to know more about it. So how did you start off with this story? And I'm going to have more questions, but I don't want to overload you.
Sure, sure, absolutely. Well, I guess the idea or the inspiration behind the story came from just a very obscure source. I heard a
Mm,
story, or maybe even read a story, about an older woman who late at night called like you were saying, a taxi cab. And so she had her bags packed, and the taxi cab driver, and this goes to show you how long ago it was because it would be an
mm,
Uber driver today. So the taxi cab driver comes up to her door, and she's an older woman, so he takes the bags, puts them in the cab, and he
mm,
says, "Where to?" And she says, "Well, I want to go to this place." And it was the church where she got married to her husband. And then it
mm,
was like, well, that's kind of strange, but okay. And so then it was like, okay, where do you want to go next? And they went to the school where their children grew up. And then they went to all these places that had memories for her. So the taxi cab driver thought, well, we're probably going to be going to the airport soon, or, wherever. But the last destination that she asked him to take her to was an assisted living facility. So what she was doing is she was
oh,
having, oh, I know. It's just it broke my heart when I read that part.
mhm,
But she was having a final last go around, last tour of the places that were special to her, where her and her husband, got married, where they first met, where their kids grew up, the schools and all that kind of stuff. She was having one last go around, and then her life was going to be changing, and she's going to be maybe confined, but assisted living facilities. So she had one last tour, and so I got to thinking, if that was me, where would I go? Who would I
mm,
see? What how would that play out? And I think for all of us out there, I think one of the hooks to the story, which really got me, and hopefully the people that are reading it, is if I was in that position, where would I go? Who would I see?
mm,
Because all of us have those memories. We have those special places. We have those special people that we've crossed paths with in our lives that we would like to
mm,
see at least one more time before it's time for us to not necessarily pass away, but like I said, in a assisted living facility, where your options as far as mobility and freedom are changed a little bit.
Yeah, like life as you know it.
Right,
Hmm.
absolutely. So that's where the idea for the story came from, and so that's where um, a lot of Billy's side comes, because he has
Mm.
that impetus to say, you know what, I have 24 hours, I got to get all my affairs in order. Let me do
Hmm.
this tour. And the second part to it is, I've always been fascinated with people who have gifts, who give back to the
Mm.
world, and then through a traumatic experience or through something that just rocks them and just lowers their self esteem, and they just hit rock bottom. What happens when they hit rock bottom? Do
Mm.
they just sit there and they just let the world just kind of engulf them, or do they stand up and they say, you know what, I'm going to fight through this? And so that was the female protagonist, Sarah.
Mm.
That was her story. And so when you intersect those two, and they are kind of coming from, Sarah's coming from a tragic background, Billy's coming from a background that's not so much tragic, but it is a little bit sad.
Mm.
And so it's like we're bringing these two people together, and they're going to help each other get through it. So and there is a bit of romance to it, as you said. There's a bit of nostalgia to it.
Mm.
um, Another thing that I liked about it was, Billy's not so much old. He's not an old man like in his 60s or 7,
Mm.
maybe like late 50s, let's say.
Mm.
But he sees his mortality. He understands his mortality, and so he's like, okay, I want to make sure that I get all this stuff done before something bad could happen to me. And so he's
Mm.
imparting his wisdom to Sarah about living life to the fullest, never taking anything for granted, because at any time things could change, and our lives are not what we think they are, or what they have been. So that's kind of the idea
Mm.
behind the story.
Cool. I love that because I was really trying to get my head around how these two people met in your head. Um,
Hmm.
and there, it's what I enjoyed about it myself was that I was like, okay, so they immediately I was like, we're just gonna fall in love and it's gonna become this like Pretty Woman scenario. I was wrong. I was very pleased that I was wrong. And I was like, okay, so okay, well, things are gonna work out. Wait, are they not gonna work out? Okay, yeah, they're gonna work out. Wait, are they? And I was kept assuming what I thought was gonna happen, and I was wrong most of the time, which is not easy to do because I'm usually right.
Hmm.
So it was
Yep.
good. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, Something that I assumed incorrectly, but you corrected me the other day, was that I thought that this was going to be a series of the same person,
Hmm.
but it's not.
That's correct. Yeah, it's my wife is a redhead who I am
Mm-hmm.
just head over heels in love with. We will have been married 19 years in next April,
Oh,
and
that's
I'm just
amazing.
as in love with her today as I was the first day we met. So she
Oh.
is the muse. She is my,
Mm-hmm.
when I create these redheaded characters, I get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of my stuff from her. Some of the silly
Mm-hmm.
things that she does, some of the silly things that she says, and also in the first book, and she's sprinkled throughout all my books, but also in the first book, I was writing it at a time when she lost her job,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife is a very successful. I'm envious of her. I'm so proud of her. I look at her and I'm like, wow, how do you reach these levels of success? She's in marketing, she's been a vice president and all this kind of stuff. She
Mm-hmm.
lost her job, first time she's ever lost her job in her career, which
Mm-hmm.
had spanned over 30 years. So she had hit rock bottom, and so I got a lot of the inspiration for what she was going through and put it into Sarah's
Mm-hmm.
character. So she really helped me out there. My wife did help me
Mm-hmm.
out there as far as understanding, okay, this is how a woman feels when she's hit rock bottom, especially in a career thing, which is
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people say, well, it's like, no, her career is very important to her, and so and it is to Sarah too. So a lot of what she went through I put into Sarah's character.
Fascinating. I love that. I love that she's your inspiration for your characters. That's so cool. Does she get to read much of your stuff?
She does, after the fact.
Do you go?
So
You've been my inspiration, but it's already printed now. So.
it's already printed, yeah. And it's funny because she'll be reading one of my books,
Mhm.
and she'll be, da, 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 and she's like, hey, wait a minute, I remember when this happened. So I take a lot of the stuff that happens between us, and so yeah,
That's
so it's
funny.
kind of fun. And the other thing is, we talk about mortality and how in the future, how as we grow older, and then one day, obviously, it's going to happen to all of us. We're going to move on to the next place. So I'm
Hmm.
thinking that if I move on before she does, she'll have these books. And it'll be kind of a
Oh,
snapshot of our lives together with various stories and various little anecdotes, adversity, romance,
hmm.
those kind of things. And so I think a little piece of me she can still keep, close to her. So it's kind of like I'm there with her. So, but yeah,
You're gonna
hopefully
make me
years.
cry.
I'm sorry.
You're gonna make me cry in a minute.
Oh no.
That's so nice. That's so nice.
Oh,
Honestly, you're
thank
setting
you.
the standard here.
Oh,
Any
I'm
people
trying.
that are listening, their partners need to be hitting those heights. um, Something I did forget to ask actually when we were talking about the redhead and the blue convertible is that
Mhm.
you made her British. And I know that you did a bit of research and sort of asked some Brits about sort of phrases and sayings. What was the choice behind that? Sorry, what the hell was that supposed to mean? What was the thought process behind that choice?
Um, well, it's funny, and especially because what I just told you. But when I
Mm,
was, this was about 30 years ago.
mm,
I dated a girl, a British girl from
mm.
Canterbury. She was born and
Okay,
raised in Canterbury, and then she was in London for a while. But
that's
there's this,
mental.
yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Because when you said you
Mm.
were from Canterbury, I was like, oh gosh, a lot of parallels here.
It's not me.
Um, no, it's not you. It's not you. And she didn't have red hair either, so and
Okay, that's
but
fine.
she was a Tottenham fan, so that's where I got the Tottenham thing from.
Oh,
So
okay.
so yeah,
Mm,
and it's funny because she kind of broke my heart, not in a bad way. It was just one of those things where it just didn't work
mm,
out, and I was really shattered by it. And it's funny because I don't know how much you follow soccer or the viewers or watch soccer with the English
mm.
Premier League, but Tottenham is one of those teams that get your hopes up that they're going to win, and then they smack you down because they lose. And I'm like, thank you for leaving me with this. So she left me with not only with a broken heart, but with a soccer team that now I can't stop following. And it's like, oh God, thank you again for this. So, but
Oh, funny.
I've always been fascinated with London and with England and all that. So I'm like, hey, the first, because this is my first book.
Mm,
The character has to be British, and so it's like I have to do research on the language, on the slang, those kind of things.
mm.
And I tell you, Safi, it was a labor of love. It was so much fun to
I
research all of
bet.
that, to go that goes into that character.
It really it made me chuckle in some parts to because I'd spoken to you before because we had a call prior to this. I was reading it in your voice, but also reading it in your voice and her saying British phrases, and I just so my husband I'll say things and he goes, I have no idea if that is actually a true thing
Hmm.
because it sounds made up. It sounds like Dr. Zeus nonsense.
Uh huh.
Dr. Zeus? Who's that? I'm
Zeus
a
with a
Dr.
Z.
Seuss.
You mean the
Honestly.
mythological character? I didn't know he was a doctor.
Yeah, he wrote kids' books. Sorry, please don't die.
That's the
Oh
thing. When you have a
dear.
cold, you can't start laughing because then you just, yeah. So if I start
I'm
coughing up a
so
lung or
sorry.
something, then that's so. But no, it's so worth it. So it's so much fun to be able to talk about stuff like this and laugh and not take things too seriously.
I can't take things too seriously, which is why I'm not often invited to funerals.
Oh, well, what's funny about that? We were talking about funerals and stuff
Mhm,
the other day, not
mhm,
not in a morbid way, but we were just talking about
mhm.
whatever. I have decided that I'm going to pay somebody like $100 or whatever. I'm going to put in my will, and I want them to come to my funeral dressed up as the Grim Reaper with the little skith, the scythe, or whatever and just stand at the back of the church and just like the little thing.
Please do that. Please do that. Can
Oh
I come?
man, yes, mate. Okay, you're hired. You're going to be my Grim Reaper
I'll
back
do
there.
it. I'll do it.
Oh
I'll do it
man,
for
isn't
free.
that
I just need travel expenses.
travel expenses? I got to get you there. So
Mhm,
I'm going to be far away from that place. I'm going to be traveling somewhere else, hopefully north instead of
mhm,
south, but we'll see. But yeah, talking about like funerals and that kind of thing, or just stuff like this. Have
mhm.
fun with it. Life is too short to not have a good laugh.
Oh, absolutely. I think Speaking of funerals, I'm going to go off topic for a second because it was very funny. I'm obviously from England. My husband's from Texas, and he's in the printing world. So when my great grandma died, I could try and get through this without laughing. So when my great grandma died, he wanted to do something kind and sort of printed out the order of service for us with like the lyrics to whatever the hymn was. And so we went to this crematorium. He wasn't here, so he sent them all the way from Texas so that we could have them, just so that he could
Uh-huh.
be a part of it, which was very, very kind. He's a lovely guy. And I gave him the wrong song lyrics.
Oh
Um,
no.
so I think it was
I'm
all
sorry,
things
I shouldn't
bright.
be laughing.
It's hilarious. You can laugh, I promise. So I think the song was "All Things Bright and Beautiful," and apparently there are two versions. I didn't know that. So we were singing these lyrics, but the music was different. And then all of a
Oh
sudden, this
no.
like wave of laughter happened throughout the procession, and it was
Oh.
that was
Oh.
probably one of the best things that could have happened.
Yes, yeah,
It
that
was
I
so
can see.
funny.
That's a good thing. That's
Hmm.
serendipitous right there. That is a
Yeah,
fortunate accident.
it
So,
is.
because you yeah, because
Yeah,
that's a tough thing to do.
it
So
is. It is.
yeah.
I've got no shame in laughing at a funeral. I do it every time. I feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable because people are crying, and I just think, what is the funniest? What if I farted? That would be
Oh,
funny.
oh, that
Um,
or you could put a bumper
mhm.
sticker on the back of the casket that says "I'd rather be breathing." That something something silly like that.
That's a great idea. I'm stealing that. I'm gonna start
You
selling
got
them.
it. Well, I got a
That's my
million
bumper
of them. I got
stickers.
a million of them. So
Amazing. Maybe we need to talk business after this.
yes, we do. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Um, that's amazing. So, yeah, I think it was really fun to read a British character from an American person's perspective because I could tell that you did the research. Because sometimes when you read characters written from a different sort of person than the person that they're writing. That was a really challenging way of saying that. I don't know why I said it like that, but we're gonna go with it. You can kind of see when people don't put in the research and the effort, and it doesn't take much thinking power. It just takes a bit of time and
Mhm.
consideration, a bit of back and forth. It's the same as any kind of like editing, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think as writers, we owe it to the reader. If the reader's going to take time to read our work, they're going to pay the money to buy the book. You need to
Hmm.
put in talking about authors. Authors need to put in
Yep.
that extra work because
Hmm.
it's a respect thing at that point for me. And then also, it's like
Hmm.
you want them to have an enjoyable experience, and you never want them to look at that and say, "No, they don't know. You got that wrong." And so it really kind of hurts your credibility as an author if you don't take the
Hmm.
time to get those little details right.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Um, Do you think that your writing since the first book has developed much, or have you learned anything along the way? Because obviously we learn lessons in everything we do. Can you think of anything specific that you do differently now that you didn't used to do?
Yeah, there's a lot of online editing software tools that are a big
Hmm.
help. And so before, I didn't really, I was like, yeah, I had beta readers, and I don't know, do you know what a
Hmm.
beta reader is? Okay, so I would use beta readers, and so they kind of helped me out. So I kept my beta readers, but then I also started using more of the online software tools, which is a good thing.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of times, like when I read my first book, sometimes I just kind of cringe because I'm like, you could have summed that sentence up in 5 words instead of 15, that kind
Hmm.
of thing. So if for me, it's like my latest books are more on point as far as getting to the point of the sentence that you're trying to convey to the reader.
Hmm.
Um, I think that, and here's the other thing, and I don't know if we talked about this when we talked a while back, but I have dyslexia.
Hmm.
So when I write longhand in notebooks. And
Hmm.
then I will take those notebooks, and then because I have to be able to scratch through, I have to have like
Hmm.
orange, highlighter here, green ink, whatever, that kind of thing, because colors are a big thing for me. So I've
Hmm.
kind of used those tools a little bit more to kind of visualize it because I'm more of a visual person. So I've used
Hmm.
that more than I did writing the first couple of books. So that's something that's kind of changed for me. So yeah.
That's thank you for sharing that. I do remember us talking about it in the call before, but I think it is important for you to share the sort of challenges that you have in writing because there's so much out there now that can help people and assist people to be able to do the thing they really want to do. So if you have challenges with like dyscalculia or dyslexia and you want to do something creative, that don't let it stop you, because there are so many things that you can do to make it work for you.
Hmm.
um
Absolutely.
do you have any like tips for people that are maybe fearful of diving into the literary world with the similar challenges?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that never let anybody tell you what you can and cannot do.
Hmm.
The reason why I went indie was I've gotten over, I think I can't even, sometimes I can't even count this high, but I think it's now over 600 rejections in the
Oh
6 books
wow.
that I have sent to publishing houses or agents.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's like you get to a point where it's like, you know what? There are other options out there. I'm not going to let this stop me. So that's one avenue. Now, the other thing, like you were talking about, though, a lot of people internally will say, you know what? I'm not good enough to do this, or
Hmm.
nobody's going to ever read this, or, whatever excuse that you come up with. But I think at the end of the day, you can't deny what your heart feels. And if
Hmm.
inside, if your heart is telling you, hey, I want to write a story, and I don't care if I sell one book or a million books or whatever, I'm going to write this story. The other thing along those lines, and this is kind of one of the themes in the Redhead and the Blue Convertible,
Hmm.
was one day you're not going to have the opportunity to do the things that you want to do. So take advantage of it now, because the worst thing that you can do is look back on your life and say, man, I really regret not writing that book when I had the chance,
Hmm.
or diving into the literary world when I had the chance, because
Hmm.
you'll never get that time back. So focus on the now and say to yourself, hey, I'm the best writer in the world. My book is going to be the best book in the world, and people are going to be moved by the experience after they read it. So you have to have that belief
Hmm.
that you can do that. So,
Excellent.
yep,
Well, that's fantastic advice, and I think that
yeah,
goes with any area of life.
hmm,
Life is too short not to do the thing you want to do, so do it.
absolutely, yeah.
Unless that thing is murder, don't do that.
No, don't do
No
that.
crimes. Don't do crimes. Do nice things.
Yes, do nice things for
Constructive,
people.
nice things.
But the other thing I tell people a lot, and it happens to all of us, and all of my writer friends will tell you the same thing,
Mm,
is I think that if you want to write, sooner or later, if you are serious about it, you're going to come to a crossroads, and fate is going to, or destiny, whatever, whatever one is going to say, do you really want to do this? And if you really want to do it, you'll find a way to get it done. But if you're
mhm,
half, I'm going to cuss a little bit here, but if you're half-assed about it, then you're going to make an excuse. Well, I'll do it tomorrow, or you know what, I've got so much to do now. I'm going to do it next week when things, you'll always come up with an excuse for something like that. My father used
mhm,
to tell me that when you really want to do something, either you find a way or you find an excuse. And those are words that have
mhm.
really resonated with me. So,
Amazing. That's
yep,
great advice. Thank you. I really
yeah,
hope that somebody hears that and goes, I'm going to write that book. I'm
I
going to
hope
do it.
so. I hope so. Because Safi, it just takes like just a little bit of encouragement sometimes to say, hey,
Mm,
go ahead. You can do this. We're with you. So,
yeah,
yep.
absolutely. And I think that's something that I found in the writing world, in this sort of social media sphere, um, is
Hmm.
that generally speaking, everyone's so supportive of one another. So if you're seeking
Yeah.
community and you're not sure where to start, even if you've not put your ideas down on paper, try and
Hmm.
find a group of people that are already in it. Because I think just seeing those people succeeding at different stages of that journey for themselves, you'll be able to see, okay, so it could look like this for me. It took 5 months for that person to write a book and to publish it, but it took 10 years for this person to get their book out there, because it's so different
Yeah.
for everybody. I've
Oh, it
spoken
totally
to
is.
writers who have literally done that, is that it's taken them 10 years to write the book, which is incredible, or it's taken them 5 months to write it, which is incredible. They still did it.
Yeah.
They still ended up with that tangible thing that is the idea that was just scrambly bits in their brain for a while. So I think it's cool.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say is that the first, and this is for people that are thinking about writing a book, wanting to write a book, they're in the middle of their work in progress, whatever it is. The
Mm-hmm.
first time that you hold your book in your hands, it's like you look at it and it's like, oh my God, it's Safi, it's euphoric. So I highly recommend it. If you want to do it, just, it's going to be tough. It's not going to be a walk in the park. It's not going to
Mm,
be easy. It's not going to be anything that it's going to be handed to you. But I think the things that we have to work for, and the things that we struggle with, and when our backs are to the wall
mm.
and we get through it, it's like we appreciate them so much more. So every time I see my books, it's like I just, you hold it in your hand, and it's just, I can't explain it. So for everybody that's watching this,
Mm.
that's the reward at the end of this. Don't give up. Just keep doing it, because it's just, yeah, it's one of the greatest feelings ever. Trust me.
Okay, you've convinced me I need to get on with my work in progress. I get it. Mine's been on the back burner because I've been doing this. No,
Yeah, you
that's no
have been a little
excuse.
busy,
Yeah.
so
Only a little bit. I'm just trying to start an empire. That's all it is. No, I'm trying to start a movement. What I'm trying to do, and I've said this in other episodes, is I'm trying to get people to remember that behind those pages was a human being sweating, possibly crying, um, pouring their soul into this thing. And it's
yeah,
so easy to forget that. Because
yeah,
if you, for example, go into a bookstore and you pick up a book and you think, oh, the blurb looks cool, maybe there's a picture of the author, but you don't really think about it. You're going through the book and you're like, okay, that was good, or that was bad, or I love that. I hope there's another one. And then they put the book down, and then that author's forgotten about. Whereas
yeah,
through doing this, I'm getting to know people and I'm hearing their voices and I'm reading the books, and I'm like, okay, that's why you put that in there. Or you said you had this experience as a kid, and that's why you've put that as the main core of this story. And all
yeah.
of a sudden, it means more, and it's got more depth and more richness. And then I'm enjoying the books more, which is
Hmm.
crazy. So let's keep doing stuff like this because
Yeah.
I think it just adds value to something that's already cool.
Oh,
So why
absolutely.
not?
Well, with anything, when you see the finished product, you think, "Oh, this is nice," and "Wow, this is all
Hmm.
that," but you don't know all the time that went into it, all the heartache, all the
Hmm.
fun, all the great stuff. Because there's a story within a story. Everything that was
Hmm.
created, there's a story that went into how this book got created. I'll give you just a little anecdote with me when I was writing my first book. The kids, we have two kids,
Hmm.
they were much younger then, and so the only time that I had to really write and then work on the audio portion of the book was at 4:30 in the morning. And so I would wake up
Hmm.
at 4:30 in the morning, because that was the only time that the house was quiet. I didn't have to
Hmm.
do anything with the kids were quiet and everything. So I would get up and I would write or do the audio portion of the book until, like, 6:30, and then finally I could hear the kids waking up and all that, and it's like, all right, got to put it all away, so I'll get
Wow.
back to this later. But back to the whole thing, you'll find a way, or you find an excuse. It's like, wow, I'm really tired, I just can't do it. Okay, well, you don't have anything on the schedule at 4:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning. Get up and do it then. You have a couple hours to do it. So
Mm.
so like you said, you were talking about those anecdotes about, you see the finished copy but you don't realize what goes into it. Well, for me,
Mm.
that was one of the things that went into the first book, was just my crazy hours just trying to get it done.
I I think maybe we should start putting stats in them up front of books. Like this many hours went into it, this many versions of it, this many rejections, this many
Yeah.
sleepless nights because I couldn't stop thinking about it. Just have
Yeah,
it as like
yeah.
a big list of stuff.
Well, Safi, let me ask you this: have you ever
Mm.
been asleep, and then you have a dream, or you wake up and you think, "Oh my God, that's a perfect plot line," and then it's like, "Okay, I'll remember it in the morning," and then you wake up the next morning and it's like, "Oh no, what was
Erased.
that again? It was this," or you try to write it down and you're half asleep and it's like, or whatever. So so
Yeah.
always keep a notebook and a pen by your bed or wherever you're
Hmm.
falling asleep at, and make sure to write it down legibly, and then
Hmm.
when you get up in the morning it'll be there, because if not, you'll lose it forever. And then remember what you and I talked about before:
Hmm.
my best ideas always came in the shower. So on
Yes.
Amazon, they have a waterproof pad with pencils and stuff, and it's got little suction cups on it. So you stick it on the wall, and you never lose an idea in the shower. And that was a big help for me too. So these
I
little
might get one.
these little quirks that help you with your writing. I keep a small notebook in the car, because sometimes when I'm driving, I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. Don't, and
Hmm.
by the time I get to where I'm going, I've forgotten the whole thing. But I make sure that I get to a red light or I get to a stop before I write. So don't worry about that. But there's just little things that, little tricks that you can do, that'll help, because who inspiration can strike at any time, and you got to jot it
Hmm.
down, because it's sometimes you forget it.
Absolutely. I've got notepads in every friggin' room of my house because I don't want to have to run anywhere because I'm so unfit. I'm not going to like have that be my hurdle that I can't write something down. So I'm like, okay, either my phone's always in my hand or it's my pocket. And if I don't have like pants with pockets in, then I have a notebook somewhere. Or
Yeah.
sometimes I have to go, stop talking, hang on, I have an idea. And I remember this one time, shower thoughts. It was in the shower. That's where I do most of my best work or on film. Um, and I was really, really struggling with because sometimes I like to write the ending to something so that I can join up from front to back.
Yeah.
So I knew that I knew I had the plot for book two. Book one's not even finished yet. I've got the plot for book two, and I
Hmm.
couldn't figure out how they could link with one another from end to beginning. And I
Hmm.
had this moment where I thought, oh my god, that's it. That's it. That's the thing. And I stopped mid shower, shampoo still in my hair,
Yep.
ran with the dressing gown to the first thing that I could get a hold of. And my husband was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Stop talking! Hang on, I have to write this down because this is gold, and it's crumbling away as I'm writing,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
you can't always keep hold of it. It's not like okay,
Hmm.
let me just keep holding this thing. It starts
Yeah.
to deteriorate very quickly for
It
me.
does. It's like ice
Yeah.
cream in the summertime. It's just melting away, and it's like I got to eat this before it melts all the way. Same thing with
Mm-hmm.
it's like because in your mind you have the perfect um, structure
Mm-hmm.
for this is this, but then like you said, it's like now wait a minute, now how come this links with this? Yeah, so you got to write it down and quick.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very important. So that's also something that I learned from. I got this like BBC masterclass thing, which is kind of like or is Masterclass the American one? Either way, it's
Yeah.
experts talking about good stuff and advice and all that sort of thing. And it was the Harlan Coben one about writing thrillers. And one of the first
Oh.
things that he says is if you need to have something to write on everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm.
And you, as you said, you have to find time to write. Don't just make excuses not to do it. So
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing pretty well for himself. So
Yeah, I think he is. I think he is.
yeah, he's doing okay. I'm not worried about him.
I was earlier, but now you've kind of set me. I'm a little bit calmer now. My nerves are not as bad. So,
Good, good.
if you don't mind, we talked about. I don't know if we
Mm-hmm.
mentioned to the viewers before. I've got a cold, so I'm going to put a cough drop in.
Of
Otherwise, I'm going to be
course.
coughing through the interview. So,
That's okay.
so
Please
sorry
don't
about that.
choke, and I'll try not to be funny. It comes very naturally to me, but just as long is there someone that can give you the Heimlich maneuver if it goes wrong. Um, just smack on the desk a few times, and hopefully
Yeah,
someone will
just
come in
yeah,
and
hit
help you.
yourself on the yeah.
It'll be fine. That's okay. Um, so I wanted to talk to you about the sort of genre that you write because to me, I would find it really hard to place the first book in one category because it's got a lot going for it. Are the rest of this sort of series or group of books, are they all in a similar sort of category? Um,
Yeah, in a way, Redhead and a Blue Convertible had some topics in it that I don't think would classify the book as a rom com.
yeah,
There's some very
that's what I was
serious
thinking.
topics in there that were difficult to write,
Hmm.
but needed to be because I wanted the reader to identify with the character and have
Hmm.
empathy for the character. Well, for all the characters.
Yeah.
Um, so it's more of a romance, but my books are romance slash rom com because I really
Mm.
enjoy the happy endings. I like the silliness. You have to have silly, like we were just talking about. I mean, we were just
Hmm.
laughing and that kind of thing. And so I think that laughter is a big part of my stories too.
Hmm.
I enjoy the witty banter between the characters. That's a lot of
Hmm.
fun to write. So that's one of those that I enjoy doing. So um, the one of the books, and we'll talk about it later, is more of a traditional rom com. Is The Redhead Who Loves Hemingway.
Hmm.
That's more of what you would see on the Hallmark Channel,
Okay.
like the Christmas movies, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
The Redhead and the Fountain Pen is the latest book that's out, and
Hmm.
then A Redhead in Brooklyn. Those are the latest two books. Those are um, they're more rom-comish than they are romance. There's not a lot of
Okay.
serious, like heart-wrenching topics.
Hmm.
But the and I'll just give you the brief story on Redhead Who Loves Hemingway. A professor in Tennessee comes to New York to honor Ernest Hemingway's book, The Sun Also Rises.
Hmm.
So they loaned the Hemingway Society loaned him a copy of the book, the original copy, the number one copy of the book, for an event that he was having in his school. So for the celebration, he's entrusted to bring the book back to New York. Well, he loses the book. And so this is like a priceless, deal. So he's going to be in a
Mhm.
lot of trouble if he can't produce the book. So he runs into this sassy redhead who gets him into one uh, dangerous situation after the other. They're chased by the mafia. They're chased by the cops. She has a friend that's a former Marine, and he drives them around in a Humvee, and they're driving on the sidewalk, and they're doing 80 miles an hour through Times Square, and just she gets him into one mess after the other. But at the end of the
Mhm.
story, they kind of because they kind of come from separate. He's a professor in Tennessee. She's a New York girl, and all that. He's got a
Mhm.
girlfriend who's kind of domineering, just really, just really mean and nasty. So, of course, as the weekend, they're together in New York City for the weekend. As the weekend goes on, they kind of come together, and
Mhm.
and I'll kind of stop there. So we'll see what happens after you read it. And then the Redhead in Brooklyn is a time
Mhm.
travel romance where
Oh.
a man who plays in the minor leagues of baseball. He never made it to the major leagues. His dream
Mhm.
was to make it in the major leagues. And so a saint comes to him and says, "Hey, I've got an opportunity for you. I can take you back to 1955 Brooklyn, and you can play for the Brooklyn Dodgers." And so he takes the I guess the deal,
Mhm.
and he meets a redhead there, and then they fall in love. And then at the end of the season, that was what the deal. That was the timetable on the
Mhm.
deal. Okay, so at the end of the season, he's like, okay, what do I do now? And then he has to decide whether to stay in 1955 with her or come back to present day. So it's like,
It's
okay, what do
cool.
you do there? Because think about it. You fall in love with somebody, then does it really matter, the time or the place that,
Mhm.
excuse me, that you're at? But then
Mhm.
again, it's 1955. So you'd be giving up your iPhone, you'd be giving up your technology, you'd be giving up medical advances, transportation,
Mhm.
television, whatever. So that's kind of what he's facing. And then the last book, the or the previously the recently published book. There we go. I finally got it out.
Mhm.
The Redhead and the Fountain Pen is a pen pal romance where a man finds a letter in a used copy of The Great Gatsby, and it's a breakup letter. And so basically, the girl that wrote the letter is breaking up with this guy because he just treated her like crap. He
Mhm.
didn't support her with her dream. Her dream was to play for the New York Philharmonic Orchestra,
Mhm.
and so he doesn't support her. He just kind of laughs at her, scoffs at her when she doesn't make it. So somehow the letter gets put in the book, and so he's the man is in a used bookstore in the mountains of Georgia, and he finds it, and so he tracks her down, and they have a pen pal romance, and they kind of come together. Then it's like, okay, well, what happens? Am I going to leave everything behind here in Georgia and try to
Mhm.
find this girl? So
Wild.
who knows what's going to
That's
happen? And then
cool.
also, the ghost of F. Scott Fitzgerald is this guy's friend, and so he asks him for
Oh, cool.
advice. And so I had
Mhm.
such a great time because Fitzgerald's one of my favorite writers.
Mhm.
Hemingway is another favorite of my favorite writers too, and a lot of Hemingway's influences are in my books. Fitzgerald's
Yeah, I
another
could
one.
tell.
You
Mhm.
could tell that, yeah.
Yeah.
Fitzgerald is another one. So he talks to the ghost of F. Scott Fitzgerald, and so they're kind of pals. So Fitzgerald is like a character in the book too.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, so not to give away too much more, but she has an audition again with the New York Philharmonic. She
Mhm.
doesn't make it, and so she's like, "Okay, I can't do this anymore." The character's name is Mark. Mark, I can't do this anymore. I felt like I
Mhm.
failed you. You supported me all this, and I didn't make it. So I'm going to Iceland. I have a friend there that has a spot for me in the Iceland the I think it's the Iceland Symphony. Anyway, so she goes to Iceland to play. So it's like, okay, she broke my heart. She doesn't want to see me anymore and all that. But I'm gonna go to Iceland and I just can't. I have to meet this girl. So
Mhm.
he flies across the ocean, and then I'll stop there.
That's nice. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. What I like is that you have such a distinctly different story to tell for each of those books. That's really cool.
Mhm.
Because I initially thought that it was going to be like Sarah's story for all these books. I was thinking, how is he getting this much mileage out of Sarah?
That's something right there. If I could, yeah.
Right?
Then again, with Sarah, she had a lot to her, so I probably could put 4 or 5
Yeah.
books together with her. So
Mhm.
and then while we're talking about it, the
Mhm.
okay, so let's talk about the other 2 books real quick.
Yeah, please.
Redhead and the Ghost Rider. So
Mhm.
this one, is a beach romance. The main character is a Pulitzer Prize winning writer who only wrote one book, and then
Hmm.
tragedy hits his life, and so he kind of just lives at the bottom of a bourbon bottle, and he has a redheaded friend, and they've known each other since high school. So she helps him to try to get through it and all that. And then eventually, she's like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. It's like I'm in love with you. You don't love me, so I'm just going to go to California and just I need to get away from here. So then it hits him in the face. It's like, oh my god, I really do love this girl. I squandered my opportunity. She was here this whole time, and now she's gone. So it's like, okay, well, what happens? What happens now with that? So,
Hmm.
and then also he is a tutor and a mentor for a aspiring author in the book. So it was fun to what we talked about writing books and the struggles in the university. So a lot of what I went through, that character went through as well. So that comes out in the
Oh,
story, and
that's
so he's
cool.
teaching her about what it's like to be an author, the struggles, and just all the heartache and the euphoria that comes with writing a
Hmm.
book. And in the meantime, the girl that he's in love with goes off to California. So so it's um, like I said, I'll stop there. But and then the last book,
Hmm.
this is probably one that you probably won't want to read, but
Okay.
Redhead
Oh
in
yes,
Tottenham.
Tottenham. Yeah.
In
Not a
Tottenham.
big sports fan. I get out
Not a
of
big
breath
sports
really
fan.
quickly.
No, no worries. But here's the thing: it's not the sports is a backdrop, but
Okay.
this one is a uh, it's not reincarnation. Basically, the main character, is a soccer player,
Hmm.
and an overeager angel on her first assignment sees him in danger, and she thinks, "Oh, well, he's going to die anyway. Let me just take him out before he dies." So she takes him up to heaven, and then they
Okay.
talk to the boss, not
Hmm.
her boss. Um, and she says, "Well, wait a minute. Are you sure you're supposed to be here?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's what I've been trying to tell you. You took me out too early." So then when they realize that they took him out too early, it's like, okay, we've got to put him back in his body. By
Hmm.
the time they put him back in his body, they realize he's been cremated. So it's like,
What the
oops,
heck?
what are we gonna do? So they're trying to find him another soccer player, and the only and they go all over the world to try to find it. And the only opening that they have at the moment is the owner of a soccer club. So he becomes the owner of the soccer club, and then he meets the goalie, the goalkeeper of the
Hmm.
Tottenham women's team.
Hmm.
And so it's like it's an enemies to lovers kind of thing where she
Hmm.
just despises him because the character that put into the body of the owner is despised by everybody. He's a real rat. He's a real scumbag. He's just the meanest
Hmm.
person in the world. So when they put the main character into this guy's body, he's got already he's two strikes down because
Hmm.
everybody hates him. So he has to do an about face, and he has to be a good guy, and he has to, show, hey, I'm not that bad of a guy. So their relationship kind of thaws a little bit, and they start having a feeling for each other and all that.
Hmm.
And then after they confess their love for each other, the angel comes back to the main character and says, "We found you a body. We found you a
Hmm.
soccer player." And it's like, "No, I want to stay here." And it's like, "No, you told us you didn't want to. You said you wanted a soccer player." So they take him out of that body and put him in the body of the soccer player. So it's like, now how are these two going to get together? So that's like I said, I'll stop there, but that's the mystery. How are these two going to find each other? He's not
Hmm.
the guy before that the girl had fallen in love with. So that was one of the challenges to the book, but I think the readers will like it.
That sounds like so much fun, and something as I'm listening to you and watching your facial expressions and your oh my gosh, can't remember the word for it, gesticulation. Um, I love how much you love your work. It makes me
Oh,
so happy
thank
because
you.
I love seeing people get excited and being excited to share what they've created. So thank you for talking us through that. I
Sure.
almost, just a side note, why I was struggling with that word is for years and years and years. You might want to be careful about your cough drop. For
Yeah.
years and years and years, I thought the word was gestating. Nobody corrected me. So I was doing this and going, "Oh, I'm gestating everywhere." I wasn't. I was gesticulating, but nobody thought to correct me. So that was rude. Um. So yeah,
Hey.
it's just taken me a while to learn that properly.
Well,
Oh dear.
real quick about the Tottenham book.
Hmm.
This part
Hmm.
that you probably would love. I did a lot of research on London and all the
Hmm.
surrounding areas and all that, and wow, it's on my bucket list to visit. And after I did the research, I'm like, yeah, this is why it was on my bucket list. It seems like such a great place with rich with history, and I'm a big Churchill fan anyway,
Hmm.
so I am so looking forward to seeing. I think it's the Churchill Museum and all the stuff around London. So that was a fun book to write.
London is, if you go to the right places, and have a good mixture of the touristy stuff and the historic stuff, it's lovely. It's got
Mm.
this, it's got gorgeousness to it. Like if you get to go to Westminster Abbey, that is
Oh
stunning.
yeah.
I didn't realize it was essentially a crypt. There's just a bunch of dead bodies in there. I didn't realize that. I thought it was a big church, so that was a surprise. This time has gone by so
Oh,
quickly.
well, remember when we
Um,
talked a while back? I said
Amazing.
our interview is going to go by fast, and
You were
yeah, it
right.
always does.
Yeah, it's because we're having fun.
Yeah.
um,
why is it when you're having fun, time goes by fast, but when you're doing something you hate, it like drags?
I find that time, just in general, just doesn't go the way I think it's going to go. I just think, oh, it's going to take me 5 minutes and it takes me 3 hours. And I just think, well,
Hmm.
I've planned that terribly. So my days are always like scattered because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm genuinely surprised that I've reached 30 years old and I'm still alive. In terms of your the books that you have out at the moment, they're very sort of genre adjacent. Do you have any plans or desires to go to like a different genre? Are you going to surprise everybody and do some crazy erotic horror, or is there something different that you would want to do?
Well, it's funny about that. My wife, and her name is Kim. I call her Red because of her hair. So I always say, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
Red, what's up?" Or so Red and I were talking the other night. And we
Mm-hmm.
were talking about books and about writing and that kind of thing. And she's kind of asked me a bit of the same thing. And she said, "Well, with romance writers, sometimes you can, not so much cross a line, but you can go in a place where it's erotic romance." And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Yeah, I thought about that, but." I just don't know if I could do it because I would have to write, very, graphic,
Mm-hmm.
descriptions of things, and I would get about halfway through it and start laughing. I'd be like, "Wow, oh my god, yeah." So I don't know if I could, as far as like the erotic romance. One thing I would like to do, though, talking about genres,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that Hemingway did, and that's why I'm such a big fan of his, is he wrote about life, but he didn't like with me. All of my stories they're romance, and so romance, by definition, you have to have an HEA, which is a happy ever after.
Mm-hmm.
But with Hemingway, he wrote about life, and in life, we know it's not always a happy ever after. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that one day I want to write a book that has like the romance and the wittiness to it, but also has that that regret about this because we all have regrets. We
Mm-hmm.
all hit adversity. We all have things that in life that just kind of overwhelm us, and so um, I'm thinking about eventually writing a story that is about life and probably doesn't have a happy ever after. But when people read it,
Mm-hmm.
they can identify with it because it's like, oh my god, that's I went through the exact same thing, and
Mm.
it's kind of uplifting to know I'm not the only one. I'm not alone in this thing. So I think
Yeah,
that's kind of in the back of my mind
that's
as like a
cool.
different
Yeah,
genre. Yeah.
yeah, like a relatable tragedy sort of thing. Mm.
And well, yeah, tragedy, and then also, I think if you show how the person and how the tragedy affected them and how they came back and overcame it,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where people are really going to say, yeah, okay, it might not be a happy ending, but still, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they came back. That's kind of real world. That's kind of real life right there because we all hit the wall sooner or later.
Mm-hmm.
But it's neat to read stories about people that come back, they get off the ground after they've been knocked down and they overcome it.
I think that that's something that stands out to me about you as a writer is that you want to instill hope in people and positivity and say, like, yeah, life can be really crappy, but it it can all be fine, and you just got to work through that point.
Hmm.
So that's definitely something that stands out to me. Um, one last thing to ask before we part ways because today has gone by so quickly. Um, I wondered if you had ever experienced like writer's block, because I'm sure most writers have. And how does that happen for you, and how do you get out of the funk?
Yeah, it does happen. It's happened to me many times. For me, the way that I get through it is I'll just put my notebooks away, and it's tough as writers when you're really into it. If you go a day without writing, you kind of feel guilty. It's like having a dog that you leave, at home all day, and then you feel
Mm.
guilty about leaving him at home. You feel guilty that you didn't write, and you're thinking, man, I can't believe I didn't do that, And so this wave kind of overwhelms you, but then you have to also balance it with the fact that, hey, I need to get away from my characters for a day. I need to get away from the story for a day. I need to start thinking about other things, and then I could come back to it fresh. Um, I think for a lot of writers, if you ask them about their characters, it's like my characters are very real to me, and I'm sure with a
Mm.
lot of authors they are, because if they're not real to you, then how can you make them real to the reader? So sometimes what I'll do is like if I'm just tired and my brain is just not working, it's not functioning,
Mm.
I'll kind of make a joke and I'll say, you know what, Catherine and Mark, take the night off, go to the bar, go to a restaurant, go see a movie or something. I'll see you tomorrow.
Mm.
And that's kind of a way that I get through it. And it's kind of a play on words. It's kind of a joke. It's kind of,
Yeah,
it's not too serious, but in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm giving you guys the night off. Let's come back to work tomorrow and then we'll knock it out of the park tomorrow.
I love
And I
that so
remember,
much.
yeah,
That's
so
so
think about
good.
that. Think about your characters and
Yeah.
just say, hey, you know what? Go. Yeah, it's on me. Go to the bar tonight. Go have some drinks or whatever, and then just be back tomorrow morning or be back tomorrow afternoon, and we'll pick this back up again. So that's one of the things. If you can make your characters real,
Hmm.
I think for me that's a big help. That gets me through the writer's block. Another thing that Hemingway taught me. Not that I was sitting in his classroom or anything, but through his books and through some
Yeah.
of the stuff that he was talking about, is when you're finished writing for the day or in the evening or when you're finished with your thought, write what's going on and then stop before you get to the end of the thought. And I was like, well,
Hmm.
that seems kind of strange. But what he said was is that stop when you know what's going to happen next. And then the next morning you pick it up and you pick it up where you stopped the night before. That way, when you start writing the next day, you're already into the groove. And so you don't have to start cold. You don't
Oh.
have to start fresh. And so I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense because once you start going, and you probably know this, and a lot of the writers will probably know this, once you start going, the words will flow. But sometimes if you have to
Mm.
start cold, it takes a little bit longer, or maybe, like you said, the writer's block hits and you can't get into it. So that's something that's a trick that I've learned, and that's a big help too. Is when it's going good, especially at the not, I mean, not at the beginning of the day, obviously, but when you
Hmm.
get to where it's like, okay, I've got 10 more minutes to write, or this is the last thought of the day, stop it before the end of it, pick it up tomorrow, and that's a big help. The other thing that he had written, and it helps me too, is when writer's block happens, just start writing about anything. Just say, okay,
Hmm.
the dogs came out and they kissed their mom, and da 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 da. And sometimes that kind of gets you out of that log jam that you have.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that you can do. So, yep.
God, that was very helpful. That's helped me even. So thanks. I appreciate it. And
Great. Hey, that's what I'm here for.
it's gonna be such a good episode for the writers, honestly. Um,
Yeah, I hope so.
yeah. This has been so much fun. So the very final thing, I know I said it was the last thing earlier, but the very final thing that I wanted to ask you is what's next?
Well, book number 7, I hope to release in the spring. So
Amazing.
I'm going to go through the whole, traditional publishing route, and if nothing happens, I'm going to publish it independently. So one
Great.
of those things. So this one is a hockey romance. So
Hmm.
we have the coach of the Dartmouth College women's hockey team, and their team has not been doing very well.
Hmm.
So a new athletic director has been hired. So she's thinking, "Oh my God, I'm not doing very well. I'm going to get fired. They're going to end the program and all that." So they end up working together, and then of course they fall in love. Big surprise there.
Hmm.
And then the problem is with this story is that in a lot of places like universities and colleges and things like that, you can't have a person in a subordinate role dating or doing anything romantic with a superior. It's because those are
Okay.
very, so it's like, okay, well, how are we going to get these two together? So, I just keep inviting, like creating these like impossible situations for my characters. And sometimes they get really pissed off about it. And they're like, can you just like have us like meet somewhere and then walk off into the sunset, holding hands or something? Why do you have to put all this stuff, like, well, that's why, if not, people wouldn't read the book. So, they're like, fine,
There is
whatever,
that.
okay, So, but that book's gonna hopefully come out in the spring. So definitely
Mhm.
we'll keep you posted on that. But it's book number 7, and yeah,
Amazing.
so I've got about 70,000 words written so far in that one. So, but now
That's
the
cool.
editing part comes.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's what's next.
Amazing. So best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Um, I just wanted to mention that by the time this episode goes out, you'll have your author feature live on indiosyncrasy.com. So when that book is available for people to buy, then we're going to have the link on your author feature. Um, where can the listeners find you and your work?
Okay, they can go to my website, which is ivanscottbooks.com. And then I am on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or X, depending on
I call it
what you
Twitter.
prefer.
Mhm.
Goodreads, Pinterest, and YouTube
Mhm.
at author Ivan Scott, and that has updates of all my books, the things that I'm working on. There's pictures of Red on it. There's pictures of our dog on it. There's pictures of our kids and everything, so you kind of get an idea of who I am, the inspirations behind the stories, what I'm working on now, and I love to interact with other readers and authors and all that. So please drop me a message because I that's one of the things I just enjoy. Talking with the public about books, and then it's like, hey, if you guys have an idea for a story, tell me. I might write it. That kind of thing.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for today. I've really, really, really enjoyed this.
Well,
It's been an absolute pleasure, and you're a natural.
oh, Safi, thank you. And I would love to come on your podcast anytime. This was even more fun for me. It's great to talk to a lovely young woman with a British accent. I would be happy to do that for 2 hours if we wanted to. So again, this was a blast, and I look forward to doing it again sometime with you really soon.
I'm certain that'll happen, and maybe we'll have to do an extended version next time, and I'll have more questions for you.
Absolutely. I'm here. Let's do it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.